Hello everyone, Sleight Hand here, and welcome to the Forgotten Realms Notebook. If you enjoyed the podcast today, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. This just helps others discover the podcast as well. Let's talk about something I think you're really going to enjoy. A tale of magic, ambition, and a colossal mistake that changed everything. Now, picture this. A flying empire, city suspended in the sky, powered entirely by magic. Sounds amazing, right? That was Netheril. But like any good tragedy, their story did not end well. What brought this incredible empire crashing down was one man, Karsus. He was a young, brilliant mage, but also, well, let's just say he didn't know when to stop. Grab a drink, settle in, and let me tell you a story of how Karsus tried to steal the power from a god and destroyed an empire in the process. Netheril wasn't just any civilization. It was a beacon of magical innovation, a place where arcanists, what we'd think of as ancient forerunners to today's wizards, pushed the boundaries of what was possible. But Netheril didn't start that way. Like so many empires, it began with humble roots. Long before the floating cities and the godlike spells, Netheril was a small collection of villages nestled near the narrow sea. The people there were resourceful, but they didn't have the power to reshape the world at that point. That all changed when they discovered the Netheril scrolls, ancient artifacts filled with magical knowledge left behind by an even older race, the creator races. These scrolls were like a key to the universe, unlocking the secrets of magic for those who studied them. Imagine being part of a society that had just discovered fire, and now someone hands you the plans for nuclear fusion. That's the kind of leap the Netheril made. In just a few generations, they went from simple farmers to the masters of arcane power. But the thing about magic is, the more you understand it, the more you realize how much more there is to learn. And Netheril was hungry for knowledge. This hunger led to their greatest innovation, the creation of the mythalars. These massive, glowing spheres were like magical reactors, capable of powering an entire city and keeping it afloat in the sky. Yeah, you heard me right. Floating cities. I mean, can you even imagine what that must have looked like? These weren't just stone slabs hanging in the air either. They were intricate, beautiful metropolises filled with spires, gardens, and bustling streets. Each city has its own marvel of engineering and magic. Kind of a personality of the cities themselves. But here's the thing about innovation. It's never evenly distributed. While the arcanists of Netheril reached for the stars, the common people lived much more mundane lives. They worked the fields, raised families, and looked up in awe at these floating cities from above. And in this disparity, you can start to see the seeds of hubris taking root. The anarchists saw themselves as something more than humans, more than mortal. They were creators, wielders of unimaginable power. Netheril wasn't just about magic, though. It was a place of art, philosophy, and invention. It was a golden age, a time when anything was possible. But golden ages have a way of casting long shadows, and Netheril's shadows came in the form of the Farum. Let's talk more about these floating cities, because honestly, they're the crown jewel of Netheril's story. The anarchists didn't just create these cities as a show of power. They built them as symbols of their superiority, their belief that they had transcended the limitations of the natural world. Cities like Thaltanthar, known later as Shade, and the iconic Karsus Enclave, weren't just places to live. They were monuments to ambition. Each city had its own mythalar at the center, a pulsating orb of energy that powered not just the flight of the city, but kind of everything within it. Need food? There's a magical solution for that. Transportation? Spell it into existence. The mythalar could fuel enchantments that made life easier, more luxurious, and frankly, a little detached from reality. And that detachment, it's important. You see, the people living in these cities, at least the arcanists, started to view themselves as something entirely separate from the common folk below. They looked down on these groundlings, both literally and metaphorically. If you weren't an arcanist, you were just part of the machinery, someone who existed to keep the empire running while the elites experimented with magic that could reshape worlds. It wasn't all sunshines and rainbows in these floating utopias, though. The pursuit of magic is inherently dangerous. Experimentation with the arcane often led to catastrophic failures, explosions, rogue spells, and sometimes entire sections of cities vanishing into thin air. And yet, they pressed on. Why, you might ask? Because they believed the risks were worth it. They were chasing immortality, godhood, and the kind of power that no one else in Faerun could even dream of. But then, as with all great civilizations, they met their match. Enter here the Faerun, a mysterious and ancient race of magical predators. The Faerun weren't your run-of-the-mill enemies. They were immensely powerful, with a mastery of magic that rivaled even the arcanists of Netheril, and they had one goal: to destroy Netheril. The Faerun unleashed a spell that was as brilliant as it was devastating, a kind of reverse miracle. Instead of creating an abundance, their magic caused the land to wither and die. Crops failed, rivers dried up, and the once thriving heartland of Netheril became a desolate wasteland. The Netherese called it the life drain, and it was an existential threat to their entire empire. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were living in a floating city watching the world below me turn into a barren husk, I'd be terrified. The Arcanists had built their entire society on the assumption that they were untouchable, that their magic could solve any problem. But the Faerun's life drain wasn't just a problem, it was a disaster on a scale they just couldn't comprehend. The life drain worked slowly, like a creeping disease. It didn't just destroy the land, it sapped the very magic from the earth, making it harder and harder for the Arcanists to cast their spells. At first, they tried to fight back. They sent armies, both human and magical constructs, to face the Faerun in the deserts below. But the Faerun were relentless, their magic more insidious and powerful than anything the Netherese had encountered. And this is when desperation set in. The Arcanists were running out of options, and for a society built on the promise of unlimited potential, that was unthinkable. They started experimenting with increasingly dangerous magic, trying to find a way to counter the life drain. And it's in this crucible of desperation that we meet Karsus. Karsus wasn't just another arcanist. He was a prodigy, a genius who seemed destined for greatness from the moment he first touched the weave. Even as a child, his talent was extraordinary. While other students struggled to master basic spells, Karsus was creating new ones. He had an innate understanding of magic that definitely set him apart from everyone else. But Karsus wasn't just brilliant, he was also ambitious. He looked at the world around him, the dying land, the crumbling empire, and decided he was going to fix it. Not just fix it, but save it entirely. Karsus believed that he could be the hero Netheril needed, the one who would rise above the petty squabbles of his fellow arcanists and do what no one else could. At first, Karsus tried conventional methods. He developed new spells, experimented with ways to reverse the life drain, and even led expeditions into the wasteland to study the Faerun's magic firsthand. But nothing worked. Every solution he proposed fell short, and as the years went on, the life drain only grew stronger. Now, here's the thing about Karsus. He wasn't just a hero in his own eyes. The people of Netheril adored him. They saw him as a symbol of hope, someone who refused to give up even when things seemed impossible. But that adoration came with the pressure. The more people looked to him for answers, the more desperate he became to deliver. It was this desperation that led Karsus to his most infamous idea, Karsus's Avatar. Karsus, desperate to save Netheril and cement his legacy, came up with an idea so audacious it bordered on madness. He theorized that the only way to stop the life drain and the Faerun was to seize direct control of the weave itself, the very source of magic in all of the multiverse. Now, if you're familiar with the weave, you know that it's not just a pool of energy. It's a carefully managed system controlled by a deity, Mystra, the goddess of magic. Mystra didn't just oversee the weave, she was the weave in many ways. Her power flowed through every spell cast, every incantation uttered. To control magic was to control Mystra herself, or so Karsus thought. So what did Karsus do? Well, he created a spell that would allow him to steal Mystra's divinity. He called it Karsus's Avatar. And it was the most powerful spell ever conceived. A 12th level spell, a level of magic that even the greatest arcanists had never dared to dream of. The spell required immense preparation, rare components, and a staggering amount of magical energy. But for Karsus, it was all worth it. This is where things get intense. Karsus believed he had no choice. The life drain was accelerating, the empire was crumbling, and the people of Netheril were looking to him for salvation. He convinced himself, and perhaps several others, that the only way to save his people was to become a god. When the time came, Karsus performed the ritual. He gathered the necessary components, stood at the heart of his enclave, and cast Karsus's Avatar. The spell was an incredible feat of magic, a display of power unlike anything the world had ever seen. The skies darkened, the ground trembled, and for a moment, it seemed as though Karsus had succeeded. But magic, true magic, isn't something you can control so easily. When Karsus's spell took effect, he did indeed steal Mystra's divinity. He became the god of magic, the new master of the weave. But there was a problem. Karsus didn't understand what he was taking on. The weave isn't just a tool. It's a delicate, intricate system that requires balance and knowledge far beyond the comprehensions of mortals. The moment Karsus became the god of magic, the weave began to unravel. Spells failed or went wildly out of control. Enchantments broke apart. The floating cities of Netheril, held aloft by magic themselves, began to plummet from the skies. Karsus, overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of the weave, couldn't maintain control. The power he had stolen was too much for any mortal mind to bear. And Mystra, she wasn't just sitting idle. As a goddess of magic, she understood the stakes better than anyone. Realizing the destruction Karsus had unleashed, she made a choice. She sacrificed herself, severing her connection to the weave and letting it collapse entirely. By doing so, she effectively ended the chaos Karsus had created. But the damage was already done at this point. With the weave broken and magic gone, Netheril fell. Literally. The floating cities, once marvels of the world, crashed to the ground in spectacular and devastating fashion. Thousands of people died, and those who survived were left to face a harsh, magicless world. The empire of Netheril was no more. Its once great arcanists were dead, powerless, or scattered. The land that had once been the heart of their civilization became known as the Anarch Desert, a desolate wasteland shaped by the life drain and the cataclysmic collapse of the weave. As for Karsus, his fate was perhaps the most tragic of all. The moment Mystra sacrificed herself, Karsus lost his godhood. He became immortal once again, but not before witnessing the full consequences of his actions. He saw the cities fall, the people die, and the empire he had tried to save crumbled to nothing but dust. Consumed by guilt and despair, Karsus was transformed into a petrified statue, his body frozen in a moment of anguish. You'd think that would be the end of Netheril's story. But it's not. Even in ruin, the legacy of Netheril looms large over Faerun. Their magic, their ambition, their hubris, it all left a mark on the world that can still be felt today. The Netherese were the ones who pushed the boundaries of magic farther than anyone before or since. They created spells, artifacts, and magical techniques that adventurers still uncover in ruins of their civilization. The Mythalar, for instance, remains one of the most sought-after relics of their empire, a reminder of the heights they once achieved. But their story is also a cautionary tale. The Netherese remind us of the dangers of unchecked ambition. What happens when we reach too far without considering the consequences? Their rise and fall are a testament to the power of magic and the responsibility that comes with it. And Mystra, she returned. After sacrificing herself to stabilize the weave, she was eventually reborn in a new form, as gods often are. The new Mystra, wiser and more cautious, imposed new rules on magic. limiting power of mortals and ensuring that no one could ever repeat Karsus's mistake. So, at this point, what do we take away from all of this? Well, the story of Netheril is one of brilliance and tragedy, of people who dared to dream of the impossible but fell victim to their own hubris. It's a story about the power of magic and the responsibility that comes with it, about ambition and its consequences. And it's a story that reminds us of something fundamental. Magic isn't just a tool. It's a force, a living, breathing thing that demands respect. The Netherese learned that lesson the hard way, and their legacy serves as a warning to anyone who'd follow in their footsteps. But it's also a story of hope, because even in the ruins of Netheril, there's beauty. There's the knowledge that they left behind, the lessons we can learn, and the reminder that even in failure, there's something to be gained. That's what makes the history of Netheril so fascinating, so compelling. It's not just a story about magic, it's a story about us, about humanity, with all our brilliance and our flaws. So, what do you think? If you were an arcanist in Netheril, would you have reached for the stars like they did? Or would you have played it safe, knowing the risks? It's a question worth pondering as we look at the world that they left behind. And that, my friends, is the tale of Netheril and Karsus's folly, a story of magic, ambition, and the enduring power of the weave. If you liked today's episode, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and comment down below for future topics that you'd like covered. That's it for today, my friends. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, until next time, I'm Sleight Hand. Take care and stay curious.